Welcome to Global Harmony House on our Insight Thursday night here, January 21, 2021. And somebody sent to me the perspective that this is the 21st day of the 21st year. And if we're together at 9:21, it'll be the 21 minute of lots of 21s today. So maybe it's a fortunate day for many, but it is definitely a fortunate day for all of us because we are here to commemorate a spiritual tower. And you are seeing the tower of peace and power, knowledge that was created here at Global Harmony House as a memorial to have us experience what you might have also just seen as the courtyard in Mount Abu Madhuban, India, the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris, and a memorial to Prajapati Brahma, who is the first instrument of the Brahma Kumaris. And tonight we're going to have a very special evening about that. It's entitled A Spiritual Tower. And maybe you saw the flyer, but it said, when we reflect on a spiritual tower, we are reminded of the essence of spirituality: peaceful, pure-hearted, empowering, and wise. Brahma Baba transcended his physical body on January 18th, 1969. But the impressions of his life are timeless and continue to light the way for spiritual seekers around the world to discover their own inner strength and beauty. So we are glad that you have joined us, and we have a wonderful program. Every Thursday is wonderful, but this will be unique because it is going to share about the founder of the Brahma Kumaris, the first teacher, the first student, and who was the instrument that all of us have come to take benefit from. So it's a nice way of appreciating what we've learned, who we've met, and what we've accomplished. And in order to do that, we're going to share a little story about Brahma Baba, and it's called One. It's a video that was created by an Australian actress, writer, producer, Barbara Ramsey. And after that, we get to hear the wonderful experiences of our ever-present regular MCs, but tonight they're going to take on another role. And then again, at the end, we'll have some meditation and reflection on just what it is that we have received. And so I want to welcome you all and sit back, relax while we switch into the video form. I have a couple buttons to click here. And so I would like to take you on a little journey back in time and allow Barbara to share with us the story of Brahma Baba.
And the world was filled with change. The mutiny by the Bengal army was suppressed, and Britain took over direct government of India from the East India Company. Mahatma Gandhi still lived in South Africa, and Rabindranath Tagore had not yet written Gitanjali. In America, the first telephone message was transmitted, and in Britain, the first electric light was turned on. Charles Darwin published Origin of the Species, and the theory of evolution was born. The Civil War ended in America, and slavery was outlawed. Wilhelm of Prussia was proclaimed Emperor of Germany. In Sindh, India, a son was born to the Kripalani family. He was named Lekraj, and he was an ordinary boy. As the years passed, he grew straight and strong, this son of a schoolmaster. In time, he began a business and married and had children of his own. But still, he was an ordinary man. He was a good man, a kind man, an honorable man, but an ordinary man. And the light touched him and entered his mind. Now his mind was already fine and worked well, but when the light came, he saw that there were shadows in the corners, things left there to think about another tomorrow, things unresolved, matters saved for a day when he had time. But he found he couldn't wait until there was time, for this was not a light he could close his eyes against. This light was inside him and had taken up residence. Eviction was not possible. Not that he really wanted to be without the light, but now and then it would probably have been more comfortable. It did, after all, uncover him to himself. And the light lay in front of his mind like a pathway, or a doorway, or a destination. Sometimes it was barely there, only visible if he concentrated, and he taught himself to keep it where he could see it. Sometimes it filled him until it shone out through his eyes, and others began to sit near him to see what would happen. They knew that something would. And for a while he thought the light was him, was somehow his own essence. But in time he learned that the light was not his, though he had one of his own. This light was other, and it came from some distant place where the rules of physics hung balanced, and time meant something else entirely. And he expected it to be indifferent, but it wasn't. He expected it to be hard with knowledge, but it wasn't. He expected it to be implausible and unreachable and somehow threatening, but it wasn't, and it wasn't, and it wasn't. But it did change him. It laid new understanding gently in his mind, and he saw things he never thought he'd see. He learned about eternity and immortality and consciousness. Things that had seemed important no longer mattered, and he gave away his old life and the things that went with it. Those who waited with him to see what would happen knew this was a chance that fate had given them. He spoke of what the light showed him, and they listened. And some of them changed their days so they could listen. For some, there were obstacles and barriers and difficulties, but they overcame them all, and untangling themselves from the expectations of custom, they came. After all, fate was calling. This was an age when women in that land were made less, and decisions about living were never theirs. And so, from among the ones who came with him, he gave administration into the hands of the women. This was a balance rarely seen in those days and in that place. And so they stayed together, and they were held well and safely for more than a score of years, and they learned how to live. They practiced putting matters of the light first, and matters of the world second. And in time, there was no longer difference to be seen between the two. But winds of change were blowing, and in the way of the world in that time, there was the dissension of boundaries and countries and ownership. Anger and chaos had come to the land, and still they stayed, protected somehow. But when change finally filled the land and closed the door to possibility, they quietly left that place. Three had become 300, and they settled on a mountaintop. And the mountain held them safely, for years still being counted. Every day they listened, and in between as well, and what they learned filled the air they moved through, until it became time itself for them. And time upon time, he told them that what he spoke about came from the light, and not from him. And again he would tell them, and 1,000 times 1,000, until they reached out their own minds and made their hearts available. The light sculpted his thoughts and cleaned away the last shadows, and what he learned, he taught. And the most important of all of the jewels that fell first into his mind and then into their hands was connection with the light. And that was the heart of the matter. Now time passed as it does, and ones who had been very young were now less so. But in all that time, they never thought to leave the mountain. But they did, and it was he himself who sent them. There were only 1 or 2 at first, and they were completely untried in the world outside of their world. They had lived most of their years with signposts and secrets uncovered by the light. This was their guide and their template for living. They understood now, without any doubt, that the light was a separate thing from him. It was the song, and he was the singer. They knew that he stood, open-handed and in between, to sing them the song and make the connection visible and available and theirs. Still, as the years passed, he had become more like the light, his own light becoming at once brighter and softer. And they loved him. They didn't want to go. But it was the beginning of something unimaginable to them in that time and in that place. They understood that if they didn't give what they had been given, it would be as though they had nothing. They knew now that, young and unworldly as they were the ones to begin, the ones who must walk into the lives of others, as he had walked into theirs, the emissaries of the light. They went to places of important papers and the men who understood them. They went empty-handed, and they waited on seats that were bigger than they were themselves. The ones they came to see had many appointments, but no one sent them away. Everyone thought that by the end of the day they would simply not be there. People thought they would be frightened because they were young. People thought they would be intimidated because they were innocent. People thought they could be ignored because they were insignificant. But by the end of the day, the young ones seemed older somehow than the people had thought. They didn't seem intimidated, though the chairs they sat in were much too big. And they had waited, undaunted and patient, until they no longer seemed insignificant. and they had such things to say. When they spoke, their eyes were a place where people saw themselves, whole and wonderful. For some who half remembered their own reflection, awareness flew back into their own eyes. For some, it was the first time they had ever seen themselves clear. Some who listened and listened again offered a dwelling, or a room, or a hall. Stay, they said, or come. If it is known that you are here, there will be others who come and listen. And so they went to towns and villages and cities across that land and spoke of what they knew in a dwelling, or a room, or a hall. In ones and twos they stayed in those places, and, like he had done, they would tell the people who came that what they spoke about came from the light. For still, the most important of all the jewels was connection with the light. That was still the heart of the matter. As often as they could, they went back to the mountain, for some had stayed there, and others had joined them, and he was there. Sometimes, with distance in his eyes, he would tell them of times to come, of people whose names had not even been written yet, in far places they had never seen, where strange language was spoken. And they would smile with him, because they knew he always spoke truth. But in their secret hearts, they were sure it would be others who traveled to those places, to speak to those people. Surely it would not be them, for such things were still a dream of the future. Now more time passed, as it does, and they had become many in that land, and he was always on the mountain in those years. More and more he stayed inside himself, and the light stayed with him. He spoke less now, but love and eternity stood wordless in his eyes. His skin paper thin, and his step slower with age, there came a day when he didn't come out of the room he slept in. He had left his body behind. They came from all over the land. They came to the mountain. They carried their hearts carefully, for fear they would break. They had never thought of a time without him. But losing him never meant they lost the light, for the light was separate and would never finish, any more than time itself would stop. And still, they had a pledge to keep. So wherever they went, they told what they knew, and people came to hear the secrets of time and the reasons for things. And it happened, as it usually does, that the future folded itself into the present, and what he had said in those long past days on the mountain became real. One of them, who had been with him on the mountain when he spoke of the future, turned around in time and found that she had indeed come to a far place where strange language was spoken. And when she spoke to the people there, she had someone with her who changed her language into theirs so they could understand each other. So it began in this new place. Many came, attracted as a magnet is to a lodestar by hearing about the light. And in this land, they called the light by a different word, and sometimes two or three. But it was all only one, for the light is one. It is always and ever only one. And one it will be called here, until the end of this, for then it belongs to all, and names of different language can lie quiet for a while. Now in time and in the way of things, people told people who told people of what they were hearing, and how the look in the eyes of the ones who spoke lifted their hearts. Soon there were places opened so that people could come back, and back again. And when there were too many people, more places were found. And so things grew and multiplied. Time carried them across mountains and oceans to places they had never seen. And the winds of destiny took them to another new land, and then another, and another. There were many more than 300 now, and some of them had never even seen the mountain. They had been born in other lands, speaking other language. They listened to stories of the mountain and the one who had left his body behind, who had loved them so much, even before they were born, and their hearts flew. They would sit, with distance in their eyes and one in their minds. This most important thing was done in silence. Their doors were always open to anyone who cared to listen, and people of all kinds came. Sometimes they would take a large public place and hundreds would come, or even thousands. And so, time has turned again, and it is now. The world is a strange and wonderful place in this age. It is filled with fantastic invention and amazing discovery. It is dimmed by fear and want and anger, and brightened by courage and hope and love. It is full. There is darkness, but it is always shot through with light. And this was light. They brought it with them. They gave it away. People took it into their homes and families, and some of them caught light from one another. Some even stumbled into it like an afterthought, or an accident, or a blessing. Some were touched and changed their lives. Some were touched and changed life for other people. And in the way of the world, they organized it and ordered it and smoothed the edges to make it available and familiar. They focused it on what the world needed and named it things that stirred the heart. Programs were created that covered large parts of the globe, and they were as varied as the people who created them. Some collected peace and reignited values. Others celebrated youth, and still others honored age. They were programs that offered freedom of mind to those who had no freedom, and others that joined land to land in cooperation. A manifesto was drawn from the hearts of people, a plan for peace and happiness and equality. And they came together from far places. They were politicians and artists and business people. They were physicians and spiritual leaders and educators. They were women and they were men and they were every color a human being can be. They came out of love for the world and its people. They came because they heard time calling. They came. Did he know how many people would be touched when he saw the future that day on the mountain so long ago? And how many people are still to come? If we hold the laws of physics up to the light, is it like critical mass? For if it is, and the law holds true, the day may come when just one more person is needed. Just one more soul to tip the balance. One more to make the last weight on the scales that measure light against dark. In that instant, the world could change. And it doesn't have to be someone wealthy and influential. It doesn't have to be someone famous or revered. It doesn't have to be a world leader or the head of a religion. It just has to be someone. And time never stops turning, and the light never ceases. And light attracts light. It comes from many places, from many people. Like a rainbow, it is made of all the colors that exist in the human heart. The colors of generosity and care for the world. The colors of open hands and open hearts. The colors of faith of all kinds. And as time stretches from the past into now, there are sometimes the questions of how and what and why. And so a story was written about a journey that began so long ago in a far distant land. A journey you have now become part of. And you hold it now in your hands. And many still cross the sea and come to that same mountain. Some things have changed. Some things are always and ever the same. It is love for one. It was always that.
Om Shanti. That was a presentation called One, created by Barbara Ramsey, telling the history of the Brahma Kumaris, of the initial founder, Brahma Baba, and his relationship with the light, with God, the Supreme Soul, sometimes referred to as Baba. And so we thought tonight that we'd listen to some of the experiences of the voices that you know so well from our MCs. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Louise and Mr. Michelle. And so if you are there with us.
Yes, we are. Hi, Brother Eric. Hi,
Offer
everyone.
your thoughts a little about the video, the day, your experience, and some of the things that might be, as was said, inspiring to others as you share what you know. So I'm going to turn it over to Louise and Michelle for a little while, and they'll just offer some of their thoughts at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Eric. And I guess I'll start, Michelle. Well, it's interesting to be on this side of the stage. Instead of interviewing, we are presenting a bit tonight. And both Michelle and I'll speak for Michelle for a moment too, are fairly new to the Brahmins. I've been here, I think, about 5 years. How about you, Michelle, as a student?
These many. 3.
These many, okay. We're babies, but we're still here. And I guess for all of you who are here this evening, if you are here, wherever here is these days, if you're with us for this program, then I think we have something in common in that we've all been seekers of truth, and we all believe in something and want to trust something that is surreal, beyond our minds and brains and our thoughts and our feelings, something purer than that. And I have to say that that's what I've found here at Harmony House and with the Brahma Kumaris. But in watching this video, I was so touched because it gives me a firsthand view of something that I could not experience, and that is knowing Brahma Baba. But the fact that he almost overlapped with, I mean, he did. People knew him he left his body in 1969. I was alive. And when I think of prophet souls, when I think of all the religions, and all the literature and everything that's been written about these special people who have light in them, they seem very distant to me. But the first thing that inspired me was knowing that I was actually sitting next to and being with the people most of them we call daddies, the original women. You may have noticed that Dottie Janke, who just passed away last March, she left her body last March, was the young woman in some of those photographs. And she was 105, I believe. And she was an inspiration. I had the privilege of meeting her, but I have the privilege of knowing people who knew him when they were younger children, when they were teenagers. And I know about the sacrifices they made, and they felt they didn't have a choice. Even though the culture said, you can't be with Brahma Baba, even though they were beaten, they were punished, they didn't want to marry, they wanted to be celibate. But I've had the feeling from people I know here that they had no choice, because that light that the movie speaks about drew them in. And his charisma is something I only know secondhand. So I know it through people who have met him. I know it because it's modern history. And I know it because I study the knowledge in how to be a more loving, a kinder person. This is a university that teaches me how to be the best Louise I can be. And most importantly, it teaches me that I am a soul and the body's on loan. And his direction somehow, and maybe some of you can identify with this, I would feel that I just couldn't do it well enough, and maybe I just couldn't get it. And what's been happening to me, especially the past year with all this time to go inward, I have been so inspired by hearing some lines of his diary entries, by reading the literature. We have something called Murleys that are presented dailies that were the supreme being, the light shining through Brahma Baba. And the way I learned that my heart could open is if I had the knowledge plus an open heart by developing a personal relationship. And I'll end with this. When I get up early in the morning and I have a very private hello with my Father, the Supreme Being, with my teacher, the Supreme Being, it's through Brahma Baba that I connect. And through Brahma Baba's eyes, and it's not imagined, I go in my quiet, in my silence, to Brahma Baba's face. And through that, I see the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Being. And it's so intimate. And this is what has inspired me to stay here. So I'm going to pass the baton now to Michelle. What's inspired you the most or about Brahma
I
Baba?
just want to say that you just inspired me, because as we're putting this together, I'm not just kidding. It's been very special sharing Thursday evenings with you. We've gotten to know each other better as well through the study. And what you just said was just beautiful. And it kind of mirrors what I've been thinking. Although as a former politician, you'd be a very good stump speaker. I'm not as good on the stump. So as Louise knows, I jotted down some notes because I have, and just to tell everybody, I have this beautiful book that was very inexpensive, but I have to tell you, when Sister Anjani told me to get a book, and now when I have trouble thinking about it, I can put down my notes in a book, and it does help writing it down. So by writing it down, I was actually able to put some of my thoughts together for this evening. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to read from a prompter as opposed to being a good stump speaker like So you'll forgive me, I'm going to read it a little bit. But it kind of ties in, Louise, with what you feel. And as you said, you're my older sister in this project. I'm 3 years old. I'm these many. But we've come a long way, have we not?
Yes, Louise? Yes, we have. We certainly have. And together.
Yes.
And helping each other along the way.
Absolutely.
I treasure you.
Those 8:30 phone calls really do help. 8:30 in the evening. So I wrote, connecting with God through the eyes of a great man, a great soul, who is a model of a life of virtues we can emulate if we choose, is a gift. And Brahma Baba, like God, is a teacher, a friend, a father, and a guide. And we remember him, we can emulate him. And as someone, myself, who's always thought about God from an early age, God was always a guiding friend for me. I remember thinking about God as long as my memory serves me. And I think it goes back, I try to think, how far back does my memory go? And I came up with the number 5 years old, but God was a part of my life, thinking about him off on my own, even at 5 years old. But if you can imagine, as a human, my understanding of God and otherworldly being was hard to describe then, and it's still hard for me to describe now. But I always wondered why there was so much strife in the world. I even asked a favorite rabbi of mine, was there ever a day where there was no war on the planet Earth? And she was a very learned and sincere, and she couldn't answer my question. And when I started to study with the BKs, searching, as Louise said, if you're here, you're searching like we are. I was searching for that clearer path to that peace. And when I started to study with the BKs, I noticed that so many of the questions that I've had through life that haven't been answers, starting getting filled in to what I call my empty coloring book. And the colors were being filled in the spaces, and pictures started becoming more and more visible to me. And Brahma Baba is the embodiment of that God and the vast knowledge of God, and willing and wanting to tell us, me, if I'm willing to listen. And since I started listening, my coloring book continues to fill in. But I notice that I'm the one coloring the pages, that I'm the one choosing the colors to fill the spaces. And the colors represent my choices, because what I've learned, and particularly, we talked about this, Louise, these are choices. Life is filled with choices. And what choices do we respond with in this physical life? Because right now I'm in a body and I'm an instrument and I'm making choices. And now I find myself saying, well, what would God do? And what would Baba do? And how would Baba react to this challenge? And strangely, answers come. And once I'm able to step away from myself and I use the knowledge of the teachings coupled with contemplation and meditation with the all-important and knowing source, answers do come. But these answers are unlike my previous responses to my questions. They're, as Louise had mentioned, they're clearer, they're kinder, they're gentler, they're calmer. And I find that I'm happier now, even as I still walk the same planet as I always have. I'm happier now. So
Yes.
what's that about?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as you're speaking, you're reminding me of my first time that I learned at Peace Village, actually, upstate, that I am it's a cliche now, but it brought tears to my eyes, that I am not a body with a soul. I am a soul with a body. And Michelle, what this video just brought out to me is these poor girls left alone without their love, without their loving father, their betrothed. And that began exactly what you're talking about. That began their forced relationship with the other world that we attempt to go to in meditation. We call it Aviat, his Aviat stage. So when we meditate, I used to think it was imagining, as I said, that we would go there to this subtle region and lock eyes with Baba, and through those eyes see the Supreme Father, the light. But this man walked a light that we will never see in person in him. But it's not imagined. And that, what I'm leading up to, is the pandemic, is COVID-19, is everything that's knocking on my front door. I have a sanctuary. And there's only one other being in my sanctuary, really, because I have to calm people I live with down by just being. And that's another thing I learned here, to have the presence of not reacting, not responding to the drama, as we call it. I'm putting on this body to play a role. And I learned that from Brahma Baba, who learned it from the Supreme. It's just the most wonderful way to get through any tragedy. And the best part of it is, it seems as though the worse things get, the more I'm invited to go higher. We watched members of the Senate on Capitol Hill forced to leave their own egos, to forget about their parties, and go to the Constitution of the United States. How much money they had, how much prestige, didn't matter. And Brahma Baba taught me humility. His ladies and brothers taught me how to not come from me, but to come from him. So I just wanted to add that. Anything else you'd like to say? I don't believe how late it is.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we've got a few
agree
minutes.
with you, what you said, that it's not imagined. It is, if you make the sincere effort and work at it, kind of like working in a gym to build up your muscles. If you build that up, eventually, I'm always surprised, and I experiment. We talk about doing experiments. I'm the guinea pig, and I try different things to see if it works. And it's almost like it is a natural law. It always works. When I go to a place that I literally lock in, plug in, it always works out, and it's not imagined. And people would say, well, it's a coincidence. It is not. I know before I even start the experiment, if I'm sincere in my goal of connecting and getting a good outcome, it happens. It never fails.
Yes.
And that is what's extraordinary, because my human being says that can't be. How can that happen? But you and I know that we can touch a place that is not of this world, this earthly world, that we can go higher. And when we do, it comes out okay. It's uncanny.
Yes. And to take it just one step further, the thing I value the most is nobody around here is a guru in a cave. We are living in society, and it's contagious. when my son said to me one day, Ma, I know you don't like to fight. I always liked to fight when I was a younger mother. How did he know that? He's an adult now. I don't know. He lives 3,000 miles away and he knew that. But there is an experiential piece of this that often I was seeking and couldn't find in other places. Most of us come from some sort of spiritual base, but that humility of this and the fact that you'll never read about Brahma Baba in any Bible or any devotional thing. And the humility, he knew that. He just knew that. Anyway, I think I see Sister Carmen's face. Before we turn this over to Sister Carmen, would you like to add anything else, Michelle?
No,
Are we good?
I think we've got it. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you. And thank you, Brother Eric, for inviting me and for inviting us this evening to speak.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Real good privilege.
And I just want to say Sister Carmen was my first teacher here. So thank you, Sister. We've come home again. How we doing, Sister Carmen?
Excellent. Come along. I'm going to ask Sister Carmen, who is actually one of the teachers for the Brahma Kumaris in the New York area. She's located in the Bronx and has hosted many of our insights and women's programs. And we've asked her, as a teacher of Michelle and Louise, to also share her experiences. So on Brahma Baba public, Sister Carmen, would you please?
Sure. Thank you all. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this evening. I think I missed a whole lot. I came on a little bit after things started because I was doing another class in the Bronx and I had to skip over here, jump across the bridge to get over to here to be on time with you all. And I hear you talking about a video which I never had a chance to see, and wonderful conversations that's going on that I really enjoyed. But whatever that is, about. It is wonderful to be with the group. This evening is usually about celebrating the life and the legacy of Brahma Baba. And so it's wonderful to be a part of that. And so what I was thinking of sharing in terms of the legacy of Brahma Baba, I was thinking about an aspect of empowerment. Brahma Baba's ability to empower others to be who they are, who they need to be, and don't even know that they can be that. He did that. That's what his life was about. And so I think about that legacy was Brahma Baba's ability to really live a true spiritual life, a life of truth. It's a life that reflects the essence of spirituality, the challenge, and he's challenging all of us to live that life. He challenged us when he was in the body, and he keeps challenging us to rise to the occasion of living that life, to be truly empowered ourselves so we can live the life we want to live, so that we can enable others to live the life that they have the capacity to live. So Brahma Baba was, I don't know what the video was about, but just hopefully I'm not repeating anything you've already seen. But if I do, just indulge me. Brahma Baba was in 1936, when he was about ready to retire from his very lucrative diamond business as a diamond merchant. The time when others would be looking to go into retirement was when his very fascinating and very active life started. And after a series of many visions and some really deep spiritual experiences, he started to realize he was at the time when he had to dedicate his life. He had to give up what he was doing because that was not appealing to him anymore, and now dedicate his life to a life of spirituality, a life where he dedicated his energy, he dedicated his wealth, he dedicated his body, everything he had to become to what needed to become the foundation of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University today. And when he started in the very early days, he set aside, he created a trust, And he had several of the young women that came to the work he had started to do to become trustees. And all of his money, all of his property, all of his wealth, he put in this trust. And these young women administered this trust. And for me, this was the first sign that Brahma Baba intended to empower others to be a part of this work that he was called to be an instrument for. And putting these young women into this kind of position at this time was very out of the box in India at that time. Young women to play that role, to be trustees for such a thing, was really an out of the box thing. And of course, it didn't stop there, it continued. And so Brahma Baba guided many young ones in the early days to the creation of many of the Brahma Kumari centers in India at the time. And in 1969, on the 18th of January, which is what we're celebrating today, that memorial of when he left the body, but he left the body with leaving us this memory, this legacy that no one can really forget. And this tower of peace, this image that you're seeing on the screen, which is a symbol of the Tower of Peace that is created in Madhuban, at the headquarters in India in Mount Abu. That tower really is a tribute to the greatness of this man, to the greatness that he achieved. This one human being, an ordinary human being, achieved such greatness, enabling him to become completely empowered to do work that no one else could have ever dreamt of having to do. He became so firm in his resolve when he realized what his task was and the courage he developed that allowed him to rise to this challenge of a deeper spiritual truths in life that he had to live, that he had to bring to bear to the rest of the world. And you know, this was the what he developed in himself and what he allowed. You're talking about God the supreme, what he allowed God, whom we also call Baba as father, to evoke in him. That is all that came through, and he propagated that spiritual truth in others. Now many years have passed since Brahma Baba had those series of visions and experiences in 1936, since the early beginnings. The lifestyle that he began to live inspired thousands and empowered them to create hope in the world for the future. The young women, those young women that he empowered and that he put in front, because that's what he did, he put them in front, and many others who came in contact with him, many of whom have now left their bodies, but many of whom are still here, and many of those are in their maybe very late 70s, if anybody is still in their late 70s, but certainly their 80s and their 90s. Those women who are, and those others who are still around, they become beacons of love and beacons of peace and wisdom to this time, at this time. And they're serving around the globe in about 130 countries. And I know that many of these young women who were young women in those days would never have, back in those days when they were being told that this is what they're going to be doing in the future, could never have imagined that they would have ever been able to do what they're doing today, to go to lands that they've never dreamt that they would have been able to go to, because their life and their vision, all they knew of was living in India, their little communities or wherever. And now they're around the globe being beacons of hope and beacons of love and peace to the rest of the world. And so Brahma Baba spiritually, he empowered his vision and his aim was to empower not just himself, but to empower everyone. And he shared everything that he learned with everyone. He didn't keep anything to himself. because what he realized was that what he was being called to do was something extraordinary. It was about transformation of the world. It was about creating a whole new world, a whole new reality. And he realized that that was not the task of only one person. It wasn't the task of only God. It certainly wasn't the task of only him. But it had to be the task of all of us. And so we all had to be empowered to make this become a reality. And so that's what he did. He empowered everyone. And those who were with him and became empowered, like Brahma Baba, they realized that's what they had to do. They had to empower those who came in their contacts, because it wasn't the task of theirs alone either. It's the task of all of us. And so for myself, I didn't know Brahma Baba in those days. I didn't know him personally in that form, but it's as if I have come to know him, because the legacy is so clear, it's so vivid, it's so obvious that it's as if I know him. And my fortune is that I have come to know some of those who were with Brahma Baba in the early days, and those who were inspired by Brahma Baba, and those who were empowered by Brahma Baba. And the legacy that Brahma Baba left with them is the legacy they have also passed on. I have been inspired and empowered by some of those seniors we call now. For example, Sister Mohini, who is our administrative director for the region, who is not just an administrative, but is our spiritual guide. And her mission is to empower all of us. But where did she get that from? She got that because Brahma Baba handed that to her. She personally knew Brahma Baba, lived with Brahma Baba, and was so empowered and so inspired. And so she realized that that's the legacy she has to hand on. And so for me, it's my fortune that I have been handed this legacy. And I am still being inspired and still being called to take on this resolve to help to empower others. So that's my mission. My mission is to be the best I can be, to be empowered in the best way I can be, but to enable others to be. And I'm hoping that this evening, those of us who are here, everyone who is on the call, will leave this call with the resolve, with the aim, with the vision to be the best they can be, the most unlimited beings that they can be, and to enable everyone in their sphere to be inspired, to be encouraged, be empowered, be the best that they can be. And with that, I say thank you all for having me, and it was a pleasure. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Carmen. Always wonderful that you can cross the bridge and join us over here on the island. It's a short evening, but would like to also conclude a little with some reflection. And so we've asked Sister Anjani, who's here actually at Global Harmony House, to share a few of her thoughts and take us into the experience of a little meditation. So if I can ask Sister Anjani to speak to us and share, that would be now.
Om Shanti and a good evening. And for those who would be joining us for the first time, Om Shanti means I am a peaceful soul. You know, there's a few words from a song that says, if the creation is so beautiful, how beautiful must be the creator. And so listening to my three sisters sharing, Sister Michelle, Louise, and Carmen, it really was very interesting, very inspiring, but also full of love and zeal and enthusiasm of reflecting on someone's life that has touched them very deeply. And that is the life of Brahma Baba.
We have also listened to the video. It's a video on one, and it's all about the light and the one who was with the light. And here we are all also, we are all with the light. We are receiving from the light. We take everything we need from the light, because it is the light that will fill us with everything that we need. We have been seekers. We had been looking everywhere to find what we wanted. But then when we found ourselves, we found the light. The light helped us to find ourselves, and the light gave us everything. But the light could not have given us everything without the one Brahma Baba. And so we all have that love that, that fills in the vein and the cells of the soul and the body. The soul doesn't have cells, but every cell of the body, but it feels like the cells of the soul, because there is that deep feeling of love for this human being who lived by the example that God has taught. He lived by the words. He lived by every action. And we are the ones who are inspired by his life to do the same. He didn't taught so much by words as he taught by his life. Everything he heard from the light, he did it. And as he did it, he inspired everyone to do it. Up until today, we're still inspired by how he did it. We know that as a human being, what would have been his first lesson that he would have learned? And that is to recognize himself, that he is light, and the light belongs to the supreme light. He is child of God, like God would say, you are my first son, you are my first child. And that recognition of knowing that he is the first man, he is that first child, he is the first son. It used to be like an intoxication in his life to know that he's that soul who recognized God, but also stayed in the company of God. And being in the company of God, what did he learn from him? And from his life of how he became so wise, Brahma Baba, he was so sensible in making decisions in his life. And whatever were the decisions he made, it was all for the benefit, not only for himself, but for the whole of humanity. He was always seeing that he has to be the one who has to be the sample and has to be the example to show the world, to teach all those who were there with him and all those who were still to come. And be that form, whether it's the form of his love, whether it's the form of peace, caring, compassion, being the one who is serving everyone. Brahma Baba was the living example of that. In the organization, we have a word that we use. We say yagya. Yagya means it's like a home, a sacred space where they all live together. And so whatever it is that he had to do, and anything that had to happen, he would take the initiative. He will start doing it, and then everyone would follow. So he didn't have to call on anyone and say, you do this and you do that. But he started doing it, and everyone wanted to be part of what was happening. So Brahma Baba taught by example at every moment, at every step of his life. And even though he has left his body, we're still learning from his life. And it's not a learning where we talk about his life or we intellectually we're talking about the knowledge that was revealed through him, but it's how that knowledge become part of our lives. So when I think of God as the supreme, as the one who's the ocean of love, I look at Brahma Baba's life and I see that how he embodied that love. It was a love that he used and he shared it with humanity whoever was around him. And as I said, who was not even there. There was this feeling of calling. It was though he was calling all of us to come and be part of this yagya, be part of this godly family, be part of the renewal of the world, be part of whatever that is and what is to happen. And so Brahma Baba embodied that love. When I think of peace, I can see Brahma Baba's life was this tower of peace. He was this one who was like with so close to God, as though his peace and God's peace were together, were matching. It was not that God was the ocean of peace and God is the ocean of peace and Brahma Baba was less in his peace. No, he was one who never got angry. Even before he became the instrument for God, Brahma Baba never got angry. I remember a story that his daughter has shared, and she shared this beautiful story of Baba. They used to take the diamonds because Brahma Baba was a diamond jeweler. And so he deals with all these diamonds, and they, as children, they will take the diamonds and play with it or go and, give it to friends or all these different things they would have done with the diamonds. But Brahma Baba never got angry with the children. So what he would do, he called his daughter one day and he said, okay, I would like to make you this golden brooch, this musical brooch, but I need a few more diamonds. And so, well, she's very excited, this little girl. So what did she do? She went and brought the diamonds because she wanted this musical brooch. So he find different ways and means to teach the young ones, to teach his children how to live with love, how to share. There's a story of how he taught his daughter. He said that if you want to become a queen, then you have to give, you have to share with others. And so one day it was put to test. And so she had a bangle. She had a pair of bangles on her hands, and one of the mothers from the village came to their home. She wanted to get her daughter married, and she didn't have enough money. So she came and she asked Brahma Baba's wife. And those days, he was not called Brahma Baba, but he was called Dada Lake Raj. So she was asking Dada Lake Raj's wife, who was Jasoda Mata, she was asking for some money. So Jasoda will not just give the money. So she said to her, okay, when Baba comes, I will help you. Baba will help you. But this little girl, she heard, and what she did when her mother moved off, she went and took her bangles, both bangles off, and gave it to this mother. And she says, here, you take this and go and get your daughter married. So of course, the lady did not want it to take the bangles. So she went to the shop to meet Brahma Baba. And she explained the story. So you would think that Baba will take the bangles back, or you will think Baba will scold his daughter as to why did you do that? Nothing of that sort. And so when Baba came home, Baba says, okay, you don't have your bangles. And she says, I gave my bangles. You taught me that if I want to become a queen, I have to give. And so Baba found different ways and means, and his lessons of how he has taught everyone had been amazing, amazing. And if I look at my own life and I see what have I learned from the life of Brahma Baba, every day his life inspires us to be more loving, caring, compassionate, giving, serving. It's like looking at the whole world today and we see what is the need of the world. Brahma Baba's vision was there for the world. As God says, he is the world benefactor. We look at the world and we say, the world is my family. All my brothers and sisters, the whole world. There is a call, there is a need, and it's the need for peace. It's the need for love. It's the need for being together. It's the need to remember God. And so there is this feeling of calling that is there. And so it is Brahma Baba's life that inspires all of these qualities for us to use every day. And we will continue to use it because it is not only for my own personal gain, my own personal benefit, but it is for all souls of the world, all my world family. And so Baba taught us to love everyone. Baba taught us to give to everyone. Baba taught us to serve the world. And so it was very nice to listen on the video that the young girls who were so innocent, who we call the daddies today, they were so innocent, but those were the same ones who came and traveled the world, learned the different ways of relating knowledge, what they have learned and what they have studied in their lives, learned to share that with humanity. That the Brahma Kumaris is almost in about 130, 40 countries. We would have presence today. And so how is that possible? It is because this one man surrendered his life completely to God in total dedication and with love. He was in love with God, and being in love with God, God being in love with him, we see the magic and the wonder of what is happening today in the spiritual realm. Even though the world is so much chaos, so much sorrow and pain and suffering, but what Shiv Baba, what God has filled in us through the life of Brahma Baba, we see today that the hundreds of thousands and more than 1 million of souls have taken that and is using that and also sharing with the world. So now, yes, sorry, our time is over, but let's have a couple of minutes of sweet, sweet remembrance. And it's a remembrance that reminds us of who we are, where we remember that I am light. I am the soul, the being that is pure, the being that is peaceful, the being that is loving. I am that pure light. I am reminded that I belong to the supreme light, the ocean of love. And the ocean of love, the ocean of peace, the ocean of happiness, the one who is the supreme merciful one, the one who is compassionate, that highest and high being, the ocean of knowledge, who uses this body of Brahma Baba to share what he's filled with, who reminded Brahma Baba that you are also light, and you are the one who is the Father of humanity. You are the Father whom the world remembers as the first man. You are the one who sits so close with the seed and serves the whole tree of humanity. Brahma Baba, received all the powers and qualities from God and made his life become divine, made his life become elevated, a life that never gave sorrow to anyone, but a life that creates only benefit, saw only benefit to humanity. He called everyone children. Come, child, come, child. Both fathers, the Supreme Father and Father Brahma, calls the souls children. And it is the children who are awakened to the feelings of love, who respond to this feeling of love, and who also surrender to the light. Because it is the light that uplifts us. It is the light that takes us beyond the consciousness of the physical. It is the light that helps us to see the world as one family. It is the light that brings us all close together. And this feeling is an unlimited feeling. This experience goes deep within the soul. As each one of us receives the peace and the light and the love, our hearts become open to constantly receiving so that we can share with the world. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. And thank you very much for joining us this evening. It was lovely to have all of you tonight. And I'm hoping the time will come very soon when we can open the doors very wide and say, come on in. Thursday night, the program will be in Global Harmony House. But that day will also come very soon. Until then, keep joining us on Zoom every Thursday nights, and also any of the events that's happening. And please continue to stay very safe. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, everyone. Thank you.
Om Shanti.
And just so you know, before the doors open for you to come in here next Thursday, we will have another program, and it's called Surrender to What Is, Let Go of What Is Not. So let go of anything else and come here so that you can hold on to what's going to happen. And I have been told that new meditation classes will start sometime in February. Date and time has not been set, so maybe next Thursday you'll hear. But from everybody here to everybody there, thank you very much, and may you always be with one. Om Shanti.